Hi, everybody. Welcome to today's webinar, where we're going to talk a little bit about CNC automation using Creo and GPost. So I've prepared a few slides just to get us going. So the first one is just a quick objective. So in this webinar, we're going to look at the GPost functionality that comes with the Creo manufacturing stuff. So if you have CNC or the CNC module, 3-axis, 4-axis, 5-axis, and the multitask stuff, then you're going to learn how to use or how you can create postprocessors. For today, we're going to keep it very basic. So I'm just going to do a 3-axis, but I'm going to show you how to start it off. And from there, we're going to build on top of that. So most of the conversations will go around the option file generator that you're going to use in Creo. And then we're going to talk a little bit about the factory interface language, FIL. So that just adds enormous amount of capability to the post-processor side of things. Right, so just a quick introduction. So my name is Pierre Venter. So I'm a boundary system technical specialist. I've been working with PTC products for about 12 or 13 years almost now. So I specialize in the Creo manufacturing software, also smart assembly, and then your large assemblies and your top-down design functionality. A little bit about boundary systems. So as you can see on the right-hand side in the screenshot there, we have offices all over the world. A few in Europe, and then the one in Cleveland, where our main office is. Some of the capabilities that we help our customers with is product lifecycle management, data management, CAD design and consulting, simulation, and product development. Also, just a quick mention that we are now part of the PDSVISION group of companies. So our major accreditations, and I think the PTC ones are important here. So we are a platinum partner for PTC. We're also certified implementers for Windchill. We're also a preferred service provider for PTC. And then we can also give certified training for Creo, Windchill, MathCAD, and Arbitex. So some of the solutions, so I think I mentioned the PTC stuff, but we have a few others that we cover as well that we can offer. Moldex, 3D, JWCAD, Keyshot, things like that. We can provide help with as well. Okay, so let's get started with our topic for today. So the first thing that I want to mention is the option file generator. So if you start off with post-processor development, this is the important part. This is the foundation where you're going to start your development, and we call it the option file generator. Just a quick note that in Creo 8, there's a new version for the option file generator, version 6.8. Creo 7 and I think even Creo 6 have the version 6.7. So with each or with certain Creo releases, they will update the option file generator, and then there's new functionality in there that you can use, new commands, and things that to make your life a little bit easier when you develop these post-processors. Okay, so we're going to walk through the option file generator. So I didn't prepare a whole bunch of slides on that because we're going to discuss that in detail. Then on top of the option file generator, we use the factory interface language, FIL, and this is just taking the post-processor development to a new level. So when we do work for customers and if we develop these post-processors for them, this is mainly where we work with things. It's just giving you a lot of control over the post-processor. You can manipulate every bits and pieces of the machine. We can add things. We can create case statements like if then else logic stuff. We can do loops and labels. We can even start other applications So it's just taking everything to a new level. It is a bit of a programming language you have to learn and you have to work with a lot to keep it functional wise savvy, if I can call it that. So if you play around with these things, test it properly. Don't use it if you don't know what you're doing. I mean, you can do some serious harm to a machine if you don't check everything properly. And a simple 5-minute code can cost you a few $1,000s on a machine. So if you use this, test it properly and check the code before you put anything onto a machine. Okay, so that's the slides that I wanted to talk about. I'm going to show a whole lot more in Creo today, so let's jump into that and let's start the process in there. So I've created a very basic, just a 3-axis machine, or used a 3-axis component, just some basic face milling, roughing it out with the new roughing tools. So you can see in Creo 8 on the mold side, if you have the tooling extension or the mold CNC stuff, we have 5-axis rest roughing and 5-axis roughing now in here. So I think in Creo 6 and 7, you only have the high-speed roughing, the rest rough, and the finish, and the rest finish, I think. So PTC, once again, they build a little bit on top of that and expect more things like this in future releases of Creo. So let's just do a quick simulation so you guys can see what I've done. So just so we all know what we're looking at and what we'll be discussing. So just a basic face mold, just the tool running up and down to get us on the right height for the component. Then I'm just cleaning up on the sides. I'm going to speed that up a little bit. And then maybe I should stop this and just do the high-speed roughing on its own, so you guys can see a little bit about the toolpath that I've used. I want to have that normal. And I can start play that. So you can see that little waveform type cutting. There's a better example of that we have in Creo now. So they've enhanced this in Creo 8 as well a little bit. So that's just a roughing cycle. Yeah, we'll see that nice, how they finish up that corner. So you can speed it up a little bit. I think everybody nowadays is familiar with this. Okay, so that's what I've done, just the basic thing. So I'm going to start off with to show you how to post these files, and then we're going to look at the files that we're actually going to use for the post processor. So the first thing that Creo, or what the post processor will need, is a CL file. So if you go into any of these sequences and you play them, you can see there's certain code that Creo will create. So if we look at this from the top, so there's some pprint information. So that's just information that you can pull through to your posted file. Everything that you want in your posted file needs to be in here, or there needs to be certain rules and FIL language programming done on the post processor side. So I always think that it's a little bit better doing most of the things in Creo and then just reuse that in the post processor. You can create figures and things like that in here. So just a simple example, that's going to load the tool at line number 10. So that's a load tool command. So we'll need like a M601 or something like that there, M6T1. And then this is just additional information. And this is where our spindle is going to start, and at what RPM and what direction. Okay. Then it's going to wrap it to a certain point. Then it's going to activate the feed rate, and then it's going to go to a position. It's going to go to the next position, and then we're going to have a circle. So that's going to be a G2, G3, depending on the direction as well. And if you go through the file, you can see it's using that all the time. Right. So that's just depending on our sequence that we've created. And then there's a spindle off and a fini at the end. Okay, so that's going to tell it that it's done. So we can use any of these, and we can program it, or we can tell the options file generator how to control that. Okay, so if you save this CL file, so I'm going to do it for the whole operation. Tell it to go to a file. And there's my test file. So I'm just going to leave it as operation 10. Okay, and then you're going to see in the message window, it saved that folder. Okay, so I've put it in a special place for this webinar. So let's quickly open up that. So there's my NCL file. So that's the file that the post processor is going to use. So let's open that up in Notepad++. And you can see it's exactly the same as that simulation we just run. So there's some preprint, there's some load tools, but for now, everything is in there, all the different sequences. So yeah, you can see I'm thinking I'm ending this off with a draw. So you can see the draw in there. Okay, and you can also see there's the cycle for that draw and the information that we'll need in the post processor. Okay, so that's the first thing. That's the thing that we'll need to get everything going. The next thing that we'll need is a post processor or the post processor files. So there's a few ways that we can start up this option file generator. You can do it from Creo, so you can go to applications and you can say NC post processor, and that's going to launch the option file generator. Okay, so from here we can go new and everything. I'm going to get to that now. I just want to show you the other way that you can open up this. So the issue with this method is that you can't work in Creo now. So you can't make a quick change and then save a post and then test it again. So you have to go out of this. You can see as soon as I want to go to Creo, it's just giving me that Windows circle that is thinking about something all the time. So that's not going to work. So if you want to get back into Creo, now you can make a change to a sequence or add some information in and then do the post processor again. The other way is you can start the GPost stuff separately. So I've created an icon and I'm going to start that up. You can see it's exactly the same interface. I can go new, but I can minimize this now and I can work in Creo. I can go to a sequence and I can say, well, I need to add go home statement at the end of this sequence. So I can say go home. And now I can go and change my post processor and test that go home statement. You will also notice in the NCL file now at the end, it will say go home. Right. So now the post processor needs to know what to do with that go home statement. So we will need some programming to tell it where to go. G53, Z0 or something like that. Okay, so that's the two methods that you're going to use for creating or starting up the post processor. I'm going to leave it default for now. I'm going to start it up from here. But maybe before I do that, let me just show you the information on how to set that up. So in the properties, you have to show, you have to have the path to that specific Pro GPost queue tab file, and Creo is starting that up in the background as well. You just have to add it in here. So I've seen a nice trick by Sean that showed me how to start up this, and let's go just Notepad++, so I can make it a little bit easier for you guys to see. There it is, and I can just zoom in so you can see what that property should be. So it's in the parametric bin folder, and you just have to add that syntax to wherever your installation is. If you're using Creo 7, then that most probably will have to change to 7, and then what version you are using. I think 3 or 4 is out now, and that's going to start it up in that particular folder, and you should be able to start up your GPost separately. Okay, so let's get back to creating a postprocessor. So I'm just going to minimize that. I'm going to go Applications, and I'm going to say NC Postprocessor, and we're going to start one up from scratch. So as soon as you hit the new button, you have a few options. We can do laser machines, we can do punching machines, wire EDMs, and then mill and lathe. If you have multitask machines, you're going to start off with a mill and then build on top of that. So for today, we're going to keep it basic and just go through everything, and we're going to do like a simple 3-axis machine. So we're going to go next. And then whatever your config settings are set to, where your postprocessor files are saved, it's going to pick up from there. So you can see I have a postprocessor number 1 Makino machine, and then a 2 and a 40. So the next logical number is going to be 3, but I can change this. I can change it to 5 or 99 or whatever the case might be. And you can see it's going to create that postprocessor. So it's using numbers here, but the next step we're going to give it a name. So I'm just going to say keep it at 3. I'm going to go next. And then we have a few options on what we want to create. So do we want to use postprocessor defaults, or do we want to use system supplied option files? So the system supplied option files is one where there's a little bit of information already built into the thing, so you can choose between like 40 startup points or templates, if you will, or you can start from an existing option file. So if you have a post file, but you just want to build on top of that, then that's a good option to use that as a starting point, and then just add the code on top of that. So for today, we're going to go with the system supplied default option file. And you can see there's a whole bunch that we can choose. We can go Haas, Fadal, different Fanuc, Mitsubishis, Berkos, Bridgeports, Fanuc again, Mazaks, certain Mazak controllers, and you can see there's 37 of them that you can choose from. So let's keep it simple. Let's go for the Haas today, and you can see it's going to use that one, and it's basically going to copy that, and we're going to use that as our starting point. So here's where we're going to give it a name. So I can call it Haas Control Webinar 01, and we can say finish. Okay, so now we have the files created, and we need to start configuring this machine now. So I think this first section, the machine tool type, is very important, because you're gonna build on top of that, and that's gonna give you certain functionality as you start developing the post processor. So this is a standard 3-axis machine. If you go on the flyout here, you can go 4-axis rotary table, rotary head, 5-axis table rotary head, and then dual rotary head. So you can choose which one that's applicable to your machine. You can come back and change this at any time, but you should know what's on the floor, and this should be the easy bit for you. Okay, so we're going to keep it simple, or maybe we should add the 5-axis machine so we can just go through all the tabs. So if we have a 5-axis, you can see the tabs here at the top will be enabled or disabled depending on the setting. So just watch the tabs there at the top. So that's the things that we can set now. So we have specific specs that we can set. There's the motion registers model, or do we need to output them more than once? Is the axis limits that we need to check. So if it's going outside of a limit, we can tell GPost to give us a warning as soon as we post the file, and that's going to tell the programmer where something's wrong, the part's too big, or something is going out of spec for the axis. So let's just go there to a 5-axis machine. Just look at the others options. So now we can tell it. So our primary rotary axis is about the y-axis, or it can be the z-axis, and then our secondary can be the x-axis, depending on what you choose here. So if I go z-axis over here, I can choose between x and y. Okay. So the option file generator is going to keep track of all your settings, and you're going to start building on top of that. So if an option is somewhere not available, then you know something you've set previously isn't correct. Okay. So keep track of that and know exactly what you want to change. If at any stage you get stuck with something, if you're in a certain tab and you hit the help files, it's going to give you a little bit of an explanation on what you should set and what each setting is going to do. Okay, so you can go through that, and if something is not clear enough, use the help files. They are available. Okay, the specs one is exactly this. Or there's a few extra settings. So how do you handle your degrees output that you set over here? The axis limit checking. What's new in this version is the reposition. So use automatic reposition. You can see this tab over here became available. And then depending on what you select, you can say, well, so if I need to reposition my tool and there's a B or C axis movement, what should happen with that? So this is where you're going to set all of that up. And this is now new in this version. You can also add user-specific blocks. So before I do a reposition, I need to go to home or go to a certain position. That's where you will set that up. We still had to do this with full code up until a week ago. So only the new ones that we do now, we will be using this functionality. Okay, so that's the machine tab, very important. That's the foundation of everything. You can also transform output. So this is more for the 5-axis guys. If you need to, if you use like a neuter head or something like that, or an angle head, and you need to translate things a little bit, then you'll use this functionality. And then just your default output. How do you want to output things? So for each machine, we'll have certain options. For the hearts, for NUC type things, this is pretty default option. We'll get you there. But if you need to change that, that's where you will do that. Planar machining. Okay, so what I wanted to show in this one is that there's specific things for Siemens cycles and things like that you can output in here. So if you have the Siemens controller, just make sure you pick the right things, and then that's going to do it automatically for you. So you don't have to write full code and everything for that. If you use a right angle head, this is where you set that up. You enable it here, and then you're going to set your settings according to that. Okay, so of all those, I think the first one is the most important one. If you have all of this right, you should be pretty close already. If we go to the file format stuff, or to the MCD file format, so this is all the codes that you'll be using in the in your post processor. So G codes, M codes, and those type of things are fairly general. Things like Q codes, you'll need to have that in certain drilling parameters or drilling cycles rather. Your rapid or your cycles that you need. If you use IJ and K, you need to have this here as well. If you use radius in your G2, G3s, you need to specify that as well. And you can see because we've selected a 5-axis machine, it added the secondary rotary axis and the primary rotary axis. So currently it's going to output A and C values for those. Okay, so if you need to change that to a B or something like that, that's where you're going to change that. Okay. I just want to take I think the feed rate one is the example that I wanted to use, where you can change that and you can tell it how many places it should be. So I'm a metric guy, so we don't have that many decimal places, but I know the inch guys or the English units that you need to up that a little bit. So this is where you can set how many decimal places and things like that should be output to your G code. Okay, so what else do we need to cover here? Okay, so just the default output for values. So they give you a little bit of a sample here. If we need to add a 0, I know there's some controllers that need that 0. You can't just have a 12, it needs to be 12.0 or something like that. Then this is where you set things like that. At file types, if you need to output a specific file type, this is where you specify that. So you can put any extension in there. The default one is tab file. So that's where you do that. So the list file, so this is where you set the name, and if you need verification prints and things like that. So if something goes wrong and you need to check, this is where you set that up. It's going to give you additional information. You can set what information do you want there. So if we do post-development stuff, we need that print, and we use that for troubleshooting. So if something goes wrong and you email us, and then I normally tell the guys, well, I need your CL file, I need your list file, and the NCL file as well, and obviously the post-processor files as well. All right, so just to check that and troubleshoot a little bit easier. On the next tab, we're going to do sequence numbers. So how do you want that? Do you want it to start at 10, and what should the increment be? So you set that up fairly straightforward. Simulation files, that's more for the SimPro product. You can put some of this back into Creo if you use the kinetic stuff or the kinetic machine simulation tool. Yep. And then we're going to go to the start and end of programs. Okay. So we can add some additional starting or headers and footers for your code, and this is where we're basically going to set that up. So we can go to the start program. You can add lines, and you can type in whatever you need to type in here, and it's just going to show it like that. So if I say G91, G80, and whatever the others are, you can type it in here, and that's going to be the first line in your code. Okay. If you go to general and you say for the end program, that's going to add the end program, and you can type in specific lines for your end program as well. Okay, so that's where you can do that. Program numbers. Do you want it to prompt you for a program number? So as soon as you run the post processor, it's going to start up like a little DOS window, and it's going to ask you for a program number. So that's where you set that up. So it's normally O and then a certain number. So you control that here. You can also change the prompt string to make it more specific to company. Okay, then we get into the motion stuff. So this is also an important tab, how you're going to do linear, rapid, circular moves, cycles, and so on. So first thing, do not output repeat points. So if it's going to stay at a certain point, and in your next line, do you want that X, Y values again? If you're only changing in Z. So some guys want it in there, some guys don't. It all depends on the guys on the floor, what's going to work for them, what they are accustomed to. So you can change that. Linear movements, so there's our G1. So if you pick on it, it's going to give you a whole list of numbers. So if you don't use G1s for linear movements, then you can choose whatever is specific to your machine. And if you want to use something else, you can pick that. Yeah, so the standard is 1. And then how do you want to output it? Output X, Y, Z in one block, output X, Y, and then Z on a separate block, or output Z and then X, Y. So that's where you adjust that. So that's all linear moves. If you go to rapids, so that's our G0s. Okay? So you pick up everything there. And then also you can set your motion analysis. So how do you want to control those rapid moves? X, Y, and then a rotary, then Z. And if you move back, Z, then X, Y, rotary. So we have a few options, and this is more specific to the 5-axis guys. 3-axis won't do that really, because you don't have any rotary stuff in there. Right, so if you 5-axis, use the one that's applicable. Circular movements, this is also one where there's a lot of different things that you can set. So clockwise, G2, counterclockwise, G3, and then the important one here is your IJ and K. So do you want to use IJK? Do you want to put, or do you want to output radiuses? Yeah, so an R value. Okay? And then if you use R, how do you want it to interpret it? So that's where you set your circular stuff. Yeah, so cycles, also a nice one, or one that you will use often. So cycle motion, so deep cycle Q and P values. Output is absolute Z, so you need to go and know what's specific to your machine. So this is where we will ask customers certain sample codes. We want to see those cycles, and it needs to be a cycle that's working on your machine, because what we've said here is very specific. And if we can't set it with this, then we will have to go into the FIL language, and we have to program that for your specific machine. Okay. Do we use pullback, multi-axis? So that's more for your 5-axis stuff. And if you have UG specific settings and Siemens settings, this is where you're going to set that. So luckily we're working with a harsh controller here, so not too many things we have to set. So I know Siemens and Heidenheim can be a little bit of a effort to get that going. Okay, if we go to the machine codes, so this is where all your cycles. So if you remember that CL file, so that cycle that I've used is drilled. Let's quickly go back there, see if it's still. So it's a cycle drill, which means it's going to use a G81 in that case. Right, so that's just a nice example of how what you've selected in Creo is important. If you selected to to go a little bit by little bit or have certain depths, a Q value or something like that, then you have to call the right cycle in here, and we have to use the right G code. So if we pick it, that's a G83. In that case, it's just going to use the G81, which is a normal drill. It's going to start, go to a certain depth, and then pull out of there. So, and that's the same for tap and ream and all of that. You need to set that up. Right, so inch and metric modes. So there's the codes for that. So this is fairly standard. We used a little bit of a template, so most of these things are already in there. Okay, so that's the G codes. If you go to auxiliary codes, M codes, so optional stop, one, end of code, and rewind code, that's where you set that. If you have axis clamping, so this is because we've selected a 5-axis machine, that's where you're going to set that up and what the codes for that is. Okay, unclamping and clamping. So this is where you will refer to your machine tool manual, get those codes, and you will enter them in here. Cutter compensation. So if you use that, what's the address it should use? And Haas, that's normally D, and then G41, G42, and then a cutter compensation off for 40. Coolant option. So I know a lot of these machines have different cooling options now. So do you use one specific code to put everything on? If you have air or things like that, then you need to set that. And then you also need to link that up with the settings within Creo. So very important, depending on what you select, or you see now I've started it outside of or inside of Creo, now I can't go in there. So if you have any coolant in here, you must probably have a line in here that's going to tell the post processor what G code to output depending on what you've selected. So you need to tie that up with the G post. Feed rates, also need to set that. Is it an inch per minute or whatever method you use, or measuring unit, and then the UPM mode. So this is more for 5-axis stuff that you need to set up. If you're using inverse time, you need to set the G code for that. 94, is it 95? I think that's the standard one. So this is where you're going to set that up for your machine. Feature offsets. Okay, so the default is G54, and then you can choose between G54, or any value between G54 and 59. That's also something that you need to work with in Creo. So there's a specific setting where you tell it, well, I'm going to use G56 for this sequence or for this operation. Then you need to set that up. So just make sure you're inside of those values, otherwise the post processor is not going to know what to do with that. Tool change sequences, also a big one, where you're going to set a few things. A lot of these machines, or I won't say the machines, it's more user preference. How do you want to view certain things? Do you want to output certain codes, or does it need to be in separate lines? And also the auxiliary code, so that's M6 that you're going to put there, your 43 that you're going to put there, and then you also have user blocks that you can add. So any specific lines before the tool change or after the tool change that you like. If it's company standard, like after tool change, there's optional stop, then you can put the optional stop line in here. Okay, then the spindle, you're going to set that up in here as well. So spindle ranges, normal milling machines just have one. And then the clockwise code or the counterclockwise codes for that. And then I'm going to jump to the advanced because we still need to discuss a few things in here. So in the advanced, you're going to start working with the FIL editor. So this is where you can do your programming. You can do it in Notepad++ as well. You can edit it in there and change and do whatever you need. In here, you have nice color coding that you can use. So it's going to give you some feedback. If you don't have that in Notepad++, then I'll recommend you do it in here. It's just a little bit easier on the eyes, especially if you start off with FIL language. Okay, so let's quickly open up a full sample, and let's just discuss one or two things in there. So you'll see each file. So my P01 and my F01, those files will work together. So these P files, that's all the settings that I've set in the option file generator. All the F files are that's my FIL programming. So I'm just going to open that up quickly. Just going to zoom out a little bit, and you can see this is a sample. Okay, so you normally have certain sections. You'll have certain parameters or variables that you can set, and then you'll use them in the file. So I've created a quick go home statement here at the bottom, and all I'm telling this is that when it sees the go home command, it needs to insert a certain value, okay, a certain line. So the insert one is quite easy to use. Whatever you type in here, that's going to output it to that file. So I say every time gpost sees go home, it's going to run this command. Okay, so if we look at something else on the spindle command, so if Creo is going to see spindle, so if we go to the NCL file, and let's take this spindle off, let's go to the top. It's going to be so much easier. So even if it sees the spindle command, so as soon as it reads that, then it's going to run this code. Okay. So it's going to look for certain words. We have some rules, and then it's going to set a certain variable, and depending on that variable, something else is going to happen. So we're using the spindle command just to set a variable, and then from there we're just posting out the file again. Okay. So that's more or less how you need to use factory language files. So there's a lot of things in here. There's a lot of possibilities. So I'm going to show you where to get the help files on these. So if you go to your installation folder, there's the path for that. So I'm in Creo 8. Maybe I should use that trick again. So in here, you'll see there's PDF files. And I'm going to open them up for you now. Let me just get this for you in a, so you can quickly take a screenshot of that to where these help files are, because you're going to use them a lot when you start with this. So in the installation file, you go to common files, Win64 gpost, and there's a whole bunch of things you can find in there. So let's quickly look there. So the first thing that you'll find here is the help files, but then also you have a few library posts that comes with Creo. So as soon as you install the manufacturing side of things, then these files will be there. So you can use them if they're applicable to your machine. You can run them off there. So let's go to the gpost manual first. that up. Okay, this is my G-Post manual. There we go. Okay, so you can see it's specific to this version. And it's going to give you everything you need to know in here. Okay, so it's a 449-page document. So there's a lot of information in here. But it's going to tell you where to go and how to approach if you want to create your own post processors. So there you can see that's basically what we've discussed in the webinar today. So you should be able to get going and skip maybe the first few chapters. Okay, if we go to the full manual, that's a little bit more extensive and more particular to FIL, FIL rather. And you can see, so here it's going to explain to you how to use certain commands. So how to use the post function, what to do in certain scenarios. So yes, all the different post functions. So you can look at that, and that also what's handy in here, they have some examples that you can use. Okay, so make sure you know how to get to these, and you can use them and reach out to us, ask questions, things like that, and we can help you with that. So that's the first line of or help support if you need any help. The second thing that you can do is you can use the PTC knowledge base. So let's just quickly go there, and if you search for G-Post, it's going to come up with a few things in here that you can help. So first of all, there's a library of post processors in here. But if you go to the G-Post Central page, that's a good starting point for getting some information. Okay, so we can go into the mill, and here you will have access to the G-Post library. So you can download any of these post processors and use them as a starting point to program your post processor for your machine. Okay. So fairly easy. Just go to G-Post Central, and then you'll have information, certain training things that PTC made available for you guys. Okay, so we have about 10 minutes left of the webinar, so I'm going to put my slides back up and my contact information. Maybe before I do that, just a quick mention about our training capabilities, and we do this for G-Post stuff as well. So we can do virtual training classes. We can do it in centers, so you come to us, or on site. So just get in touch with me or any of the support guys or any of the sales people, and we should be able to help you with some training. This is my contact information. Take a screenshot of that if you want to. If you don't have time to ask questions now or something like that, make sure to reach out to me. I'll get those questions answered. But I'm going to give you guys about 10 minutes now. So I'm going to keep my mouth shut and give you time to ask some questions in the questions panel on the GoToWebinar. So get those questions in, and then I can answer them. Now, if I can't, then I'll make a note of it, and I will get back to you regarding the question. Okay, so I'm going to give you guys a minute or so to get questions in. Okay, so I don't see any questions coming in, which is odd because this is such a hot topic. But if you think of anything and you need help, please reach out to us. We will help you as far as we can and answer those questions. And with that, I'm going to thank everybody for joining us today and hope to see you guys soon. Keep up. Thanks.